Hello, the doc is in and welcome back to another chapter of Tokyo Revengers, chapter 268, another such. In the last chapter, we have Mikey being put kind of on the back foot. Starts off with him beating up Takemichi, and then Takemichi gains the ability of Future Sight like in One Piece, and he just starts weaving Mikey's attacks. And everybody's watching, they're like, oh my god, this is insane. This is magnificent. This has never happened before. Which, I mean, kind of not really. I mean, definitely not a super serious Mikey. A super serious Mikey doesn't miss. He just knocks you out. So for Takemichi to be pulling this off, everybody's dazzled. And then Takemichi does the impossible at the end of the chapter. He counterattacks Mikey and sends him face down, ass up, and that is the end of the chapter. And this chapter starts off with a little bit of a I guess you could say recap of exactly what happened. The punch goes off, everybody's dazzled. Hakai swears up and down that Takemichi won after that point, but realistically speaking, absolutely not. I mean, it was just one punch. There's no reason to assume Mikey's durability is that low. I mean, he was trading blows with South. South's pretty strong. Debatably stronger than Taiju. I mean, there you go. But everybody's hype off it. I mean, just getting the hit off is pretty crazy. So we got people chanting Tomen, Chifuyu's crying. I mean, it's a great moment. Until Mikey gets back up and he's like, why is everybody so hype over one punch? I'm literally not down yet. And Takemichi's like, come on, Mikey. Like, let's be chill. And Mikey's not trying to hear it, all right? He starts going back on the offensive. He's like, Takemichi, I showed you the video message. I left a video message for you and everything. I said, I'm going to protect everybody by separating myself. So leave me alone, as he said in the video. And he's just like, why'd you come back here and bother me? Like, we had a thing going on and now look at us. And Takemichi's like, well, because you have dark impulses. This darkness inside you, the only time you ever ask for help is when you're about to die. And so I came back here to help you because that's what you asked for in the other timelines or other versions of the future, etc., right? And Mikey goes back on the offensive. He's like, yeah, I know that I have these dark impulses or whatever, and I probably need help or whatever, but there's nothing I can do, okay? And as the fight continues, right, Mikey's back on the offensive. He's like, how's this guy getting stronger / faster? This isn't an anime, all right? You don't get hit in the face and then get better. It's not how that's supposed to work. And so as Mikey's saying this and kind of throwing the hands on Takemichi at this point, he's like, 2 years ago, like when I left 2 years ago, you were fine. Why are you worse now? Like, you used to like be somewhat reasonable and now you're just like, there is no hope. Like, what's the dealio? But then the reveals start happening. All right, the hype train is gonna go crazy. All right, so right, Takemichi throws another punch and Mikey's able to dodge it. Now when I saw Mikey's face here, I was like, oh snap, Time Leaper stuff? Because again, there's a lot of theories about who the Time Leaper would be. There's a lot of different candidates, and one of them could be, oh well, Mikey's a Time Leaper and he's just a weirdo, which is why he for some reason makes his life suck, which I mean is possible. But after he dodges the attack, he's like, you know, I've been trying to figure out like what this dark urge inside me was for all this time, but you know, I only really came to a conclusion, well rather I only found out, notice the wording, a few days after the battle of the three deities, and I literally beat a man to death. And Takemichi's like, what? And then he gets, like, you think of a right hook. Now imagine if someone gave you a right hook but with their leg, and you gotta remember, legs are stronger than your arms. So Takemichi, when he got kicked in the face, oh, that shit hurt. I know that hurt. It hurt real bad. And he goes flying, he falls on his face, and it's bad. And so after delivering this kick, Mikey's like, oh, I was informed by Wakasa. Now my brain shattered after this because in my head I was like, oh, someone told him about the dark impulses. So I was kind of like, oh snap, oh, you know, whatever, dark impulses. And the person who informed him is probably going to be the Time Leaper. And then it says Wakasa. I'm like, what? What do you mean? But Mikey goes on. He says, if we were still in the first timeline, ... trails off. Then, this first part was a quote, this part's just him talking. Then, Takemichi, you wouldn't have gone through all this trouble. And of course, I'm like, first timeline. Now, I think in the beginning of this video, this is not my first time recording this, I may have said timeline when referring to stuff that him helping Mikey, which again, this is the part where we start getting the time leaper stuff, right? And so Takemichi is like, timeline, and Sanzu's face right after he says the timeline thing, then Sanzu's face is shown. I'm like, okay, is it Sanzu? Is Sanzu the time leaper? But he's kind of looking, he doesn't look surprised, which suggests that he knows some stuff, but neither here nor there, right? Takemichi's a little bit shocked. He's like, what are you talking about? Timeline. And so Mikey's looking down and he's kind of like spacing out. He's like, the dark impulse, born out of love. And I'm like, what? And so it goes on. He was trying to save me. He went back in time to save me. And you see Shinichiro, right? And I'm like, what? And then Takemichi's like, back in time? And then the legendary panel. The reveal is here. Sano Shinichiro is a time leaper. And Takemichi reacts like us, the fans. And he's like, your brother was a what? And end of chapter. And I'm like, he was a time leaper, which was one of the running theories. I mean, there were a lot of theories for who a time leaper could be, because I mean, for a while now, we've known that we've theorized that there was another time leaper and have known that there has been another type. There definitely is another time leaper. And for all that time, we've been making guesses for who it could be. Shinichiro was one of them, and anybody who's a Shinichiro time leaper fan, well, looks like you were right. But what this means exactly is a little bit up to question. I mean, there's a lot of things suggested in this chapter, and so on face value, you may say, okay, well, Shinichiro's dead. Shinichiro's a time leaper, so how does that work? Like, what happened there? And so you would think, well, did Shinichiro turn Mikey into this dark impulse guy? Since dark impulse is out of love. But there may not have been a direct interaction between Mikey's life and Shinichiro's time leaping, because Mikey finds out about Shinichiro, or at least finds out about his dark impulses through Wakaza, which suggests that on a certain level, what has happened here is that Shinichiro has made certain people aware of his time leaping in a similar manner to Takemichi. So maybe Waka and Benkei both are aware that, hey, Mikey and Shinichiro, there's something going on there. Well, not something going on there. They know more details, but from my perspective, there's something going on there, and Shinichiro is doing something for the sake of Mikey. Which also, by extension, could explain why they decide to join Mikey, despite the fact that he's very clearly evil. And prior to this, Waka and Benkei seemed like shoo-ins to be very decent members of society at this point. No real interest in doing gang stuff again. So that could be explanation on that part. Now, the problem with timey-wimey stuff that we don't know is that there isn't an easy way to have it explained why Shinichiro was going back in time and coming back and forth. And more importantly, there is no clear explanation for how exactly this relates to Mikey. Because the implications, just based on the wording, could be that maybe in a similar sense to Hina and Takemichi, Shinichiro kept on having Mikey die. And so in his best timeline, he was able to save Mikey, but he turned into a dark impulse guy. And so maybe in the process or something along those lines of saving Mikey, he eventually dies, and that ends that. And Waka and Benkei are aware of the fact that, oh, some like stuff is going to happen with Mikey at some point, and so etc, 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 etc. And so here we are, where Wakasa eventually just tells Mikey, like, hey, this is what's going on, this is why you may have killed that guy, etc, etc, right? I mean, see, that's a tough thing about this. It's really hard to theorize on this because there's a lot of directions you can go with this, and a lot of it's headcanon-y because we don't actually know any details, and because it's timey-wimey nonsense, it's like, you know, it can work, but why? Like, even the implication of Shinichiro is a time leaper, not the time leaper, which means that theoretically he could be a third time leaper as far as we know, and Sanzu, for example, could be another one, or Hanma could be another one that we're just not being spoken about because their involvement in Mikey's life or involvement in the timeline isn't currently being focused on, for the sake of the fact that we just didn't know Shinichiro was a time leaper. I mean, realistically, this reveal, while it kind of adds a whole nother bump to the whole narrative, though I'm sure we'll kind of get like an explanation for where this is going either next chapter or the chapter after that, or sometime soon. I think either we're gonna get explanation for like what's going on in Timeline People now, or maybe we might get it a little bit later, and maybe after this fight like comes to a conclusion. But for the most part, that's about it for the chapter. Leave a like if you like, leave a dislike if you dislike. Comment, what do you think of this reveal? Were you expecting Shinichiro to be the time leaper? I sure wasn't, but were you? Do you still think someone else is, that there's more than 2 time leapers at this point because of the fact that Shinichiro has been revealed already? Outside of that, if you have nothing else to say but you like the channel, feel free to subscribe. I'll be putting out videos on Tokyo Revengers along with other series. Every week there is a chapter. When these animes start dropping, trust and believe, the reviews are going to come crazy. With it all being said, thank you for watching the video, and the doc is out. Peace.